is also a good friend, and she was able to shelter, I think she said 800K of clinical income from taxes in 1 year because of using medical office buildings. So her story is exciting. She has a resilient portfolio. Same thing with Naren and Deb. They talked about investing with your spouse, and they do a great job. They're a great team. They invested in short-term rentals and are now looking to scale. And so, again, like I said, all the talks are available till Thursday. If you haven't had a chance to listen, if you're part of the 10X event, you should have emails coming to you with the replay links in there. If you haven't registered for the 10X event and you want to catch these speakers, go to generationalwealthmd.com/event in lowercase, guys, and register. You can listen to, so we'll have Harsh's talk on there also, so you can catch it on replay. But you will also be able to listen to the other talks. Let me see, Harsh, I'm going to mute you for a second perfect, thank you. Till I'm ready for you. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Let's finish all of this housekeeping. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen? I feel like you may be able to, but I'm not able to. Okay. So I need to be able to, and that may just be, okay, perfect. And then we did do a walkthrough of the coaching program for those of you considering starting, but you have questions. Sunday, I went live. That's there on the dashboard page also. That's also where you can catch the replays. So go take a listen if you have questions. But today we will be, after Harsh talks and his talk, I know a lot of you are excited. We have a lot of people joining. I spoke to a lot of people who were like, okay, we want to hear Harsh talk. He did speak. Harsh, you spoke last year during the 10X event also, I believe. I'm not sure. But yeah, you did, right? But he's going to be talking about his journey, when he started, how things were, and how he was able to scale. Before that, though, just a brief overview. Our community is constantly growing. Some of you were not part of the 10X event. Some of you are new to the community, so I'm going to take a few minutes. Essentially, we do a lot of education within the community, and all of it, the way I look at it, is geared towards shifting our mindset, right? Most of us, as physicians, and I know Harsh will probably share something similar. We're thinking about, our goalpost when we are training in medicine is to, medicine is our source of financial security, right? That income is our source of financial security. And often the path for us is, you just work harder, you save more, and you keep investing in the stock market, eventually get to become financially free and retire at the age of 65. That is the model. But and I say that's perfectly fine in its cruise control mode till something hits. So I went through professional and personal setbacks. And for any of you who've been through anything like similar, you realize that that's the time when things really hit you hard, and you realize that you really want to have more financial security. And everything that we do within this community is geared towards really taking those timelines. And for any of you who haven't played with our retirement calculator, do so. I think it was very eye-opening for me. It's generationalwealthmd.com/retirement. It's to take the timelines of the traditional retirement path, right, and compress it and get to financial freedom faster. Everything we talked about day 1, day 2, day 3, all of that is geared towards really accelerating your path to financial freedom. And if you want to deep dive, go take a listen to the replays for the 10X event. And that's what I did in my personal journey. I accelerated, my financial freedom journey. I got to freedom at 41. It really helped me transform my life. I went down to a day a week in medicine at that point because that's what I needed to do, and essentially created the community with the goal of helping other physicians, other professionals see that there is a path that's different from the traditional retirement model, and it doesn't really necessarily need to take you another 25 years or another 20 years to get to financial freedom, right? So when we talk about this, and when I started talking about this, I think 3 years ago, when I started talking about this, what I realized is that there is a lot of doubt, right? There are fears, and a lot of you are probably thinking, yes, I mean, and I hear these amazing stories of physicians doing it, but can this really work for me? And the biggest concerns are always going to be, do I have the time? Do I have money? Is it risky in this market? And, same thing for me. When I started, I had a mentor, I had a team, but I didn't really scale and tap into this and really and accelerate my journey till I hit rock bottom, essentially, right? Professionally and personally. And the goal behind all of this is to help you see that there is a path, and you don't really have to start when you hit the, when you go through a breakdown, right? You want to start sooner rather than later. And we want to educate you to do it the right way. And like Warren Buffett says, risk comes from not knowing what you're doing, right? So we've shared stories of multiple physicians, and I say go listen to day 2 and day 3, because we had physicians just like you talk about their journeys, about what they've been able to do. I've shared stories about our students, some of whom have generated 6 figures in revenue from a single property in 1 year, right? Some of them have been able to shelter close to $1 million of taxes, clinical income from taxes in 1 year because of their acquisitions, right? You're not allowed to do it in 1 year, you carry it forward, but that's what they were able to do essentially, because of their acquisitions in a year, right? And that's the whole point of the coaching program. Also, what we do is we walk you. When I started hosting these webinars and teaching, I realized that to really have transformation, people needed something more structured. And that was the point of the program, creating generational freedom. We only open doors for a few days every 6 months, and doors are currently open, and they close Thursday. And the reason is because we want to keep the groups really small, and we want it to be very, very high touch. But we walk you through, personalizing your strategy. Harsh is going to share his story, what made sense to him. Everyone has a different path within the program, right? And then we help you with implementation. A big part of that is connecting you to agents who can help you take that leap, right? And also the momentum you get from being part of the community and sharing with you tons of resources that help you do that and support you in the journey. So we have a group program, we have a one-on-one program, and because we are committed to serving you in the best way possible, there is a 30-day money back guarantee, no questions asked. And the reason we do this is because I really want you to think of this as a no-brainer, right? Because what you're looking at is decades of freedom that you're losing out on by not taking action today. And we want to make it, just make it a no-brainer. We also have a payment plan coming up. I'm going to talk about it later. But the point is, when I talk about compressing those timelines and really getting to financial freedom, and you'll hear this in Harsh's story also. It's about strategies that can really boost your revenue, boost your ROI from real estate. And apart from market appreciation, which is not in your control, there are so many things that are in your control. Harsh has used, I would say, well, you've used all of these strategies, Harsh. So, and that's the goal, right? The goal is to get you to that point. I've always talked about how there are different ways you can invest in real estate. You can be passive. You can be what I call the entrepreneur, or someone who's really active. Harsh's story is more on that active side. And so I'd love to, have him, come and share his story. But wherever you are in this journey, there are resources within the program for you. That being said, let's get started. I think we probably have a ton of people joining us at this point. And so let me put you on speaker mode so I can see you well, Harsh, when you speak. Okay, awesome. Thank you for being so patient with us. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure talking to you, Harsh. Okay, so let's take it back, dial it back, right? And I know the topic was scaling to 29 million in assets under management, which is where you are at this point. But let's take it back to when you first got started, right? What was your motivation to get started? And what were things looking like at that point?
I think that's a fair question. I'm gonna dial it back to my first day when I was actually on a flight back from Hawaii, and Generational Wealth MD popped up on my Instagram as my flight was taking off. I just registered, did not know what I was expecting. I had no expectations. And I did the 3-day event that you host before your cohort starts. And I'm like, you're making sense because I don't know any of this. So that's how I ended up signing up for the course. There was a lot of aha moments, a lot of eye-opening things where I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I not doing half of these things or most of these things, at least at this point? So a lot of it was, I think, awareness, which I lacked on a personal front.
Yeah,
So
and yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just saying I was grateful for that.
And I feel like for me, the journey was similar, right? I learned from my own mistakes. And so I wish someone had told me all of this like 10 years ago. But, was there something in terms of professionally where you were at, because there's always arrival fallacy, was there anything over there which may have kind of leaned you towards saying, oh, let me check this out? Or was it more just, I'm curious, what is this about? What is this doctor talking about?
It was more about the alternative pathways to income generation,
Yeah.
which we all as physicians have never been exposed to. And things like taxes, accounting, entrepreneurship, any of these things are not really taught to us in school anywhere else. So,
Yeah.
and real estate, I was always curious about. I just did not know how to navigate through the basic steps, which a lot of people already knew.
Yeah, yeah. And I get asked this a lot as like, what made you shift from physician to real estate investor? And I always say, I mean, it's not a shift, right? If you're anyone generating income, you need to know how to invest that income so it's working for you. Because I see a lot of physicians, so many friends too, right? Holding on to large amounts of cash and putting it into a CD or money market account. And they're like, okay, that 3% or 4% or even recently 5%
Yeah.
coming in seems safe, but you're paying marginal taxes on it and you have half of it and it's not keeping up with inflation. So it's eroding in value. And you should have all of your capital go work for you. So you're working less. So okay, awesome. Now tell us about your journey with through okay, so you started the 3-day event. And I think was it within a few months that you acquired your first property? So what
Within the
did that
first
look like?
within the first month itself, before the course was over, I had already had an offer out, and the offer was actually accepted. So that journey was, I'm gonna say, very smooth in terms of there were set steps that were laid out for me, and I just had to follow them. Uh, I think everybody is different. The best thing about the cohort and the group was everybody had the same goal, direction,
Yeah.
and motivation. So that helped a lot with, oh, I put an offer. Somebody else says, I put an offer. I said, I put an offer. And so it's like you're taking the next steps and taking action, which was really helpful.
Yeah, and I think the fall cohort is beautiful like that because everyone has that goal. Like before the end of the year, I want to list my property and I want to get those tax savings so that I get the tax return before, like, in February next year. So, and so that's always a beautiful thing. And so you started from really not knowing much about investing in real estate to within a month putting an offer in, which is amazing. So you were working full time at that point, right, Harsh?
Yes.
And so for a lot of people listening, that's a big concern, right? I work full time. My wife works full time. How are people who are working full time doing this? Was it hard? How much time does it take? So let's talk about the time component a little, just to help people through that.
The time component, I think a lot of the time that I spent was in education, because as you just said a couple slides, the risk is in what you don't know.
Yeah,
So my priority was I want to know everything that I can, and I'm still learning. Everybody's learning. So that was my major focus. That was the major time investment. A lot of everything else in terms of steps, the agents already knew what they were what I was looking for.
yeah,
I didn't have to waste a lot of time in those discussions because they were already vetted agents.
yeah,
So they knew that they're dealing with an investor and not a home buyer.
yeah,
The goals are very different in those two scenarios. So that was a lot of time that I saved. Like I didn't go agent shopping,
yeah.
like who's better, who's not better. Um, so that was a very, very easy thing to follow and just take action basically.
Yeah. And so the first property, I want to go into the financing. If I forget, I need to talk to you about that because you are like our creative financing guru. You come in, you coach the coach within the program too. But the first property for you was out of state. You live in Chicago and
Yeah.
your property was in Florida, correct? And
Yes.
so that's a big question for a lot of people, right? Some people have listened to the 3-day event, they're thinking, okay, I like short-term rentals, but it's not going to make sense in my market. And my first property was out of state, yours was out of state. So let's talk about that a little bit. What were there any barriers to investing out of state? How did you make it work? How many times did you go down to see your property?
Uh, Barriers are, I thought barriers, when I look back now, the barriers were actually in my head. They were not real barriers because I did not go, actually, I've been there once so
Was
far.
it was just once, right?
Yeah.
During the setup time, right before you listed it, or was it?
No, it was the tour, that's it. Like the first tour with the agent after I put the offer, I'm like, okay, the offer is accepted. I'm gonna come see. During the
Yes.
inspection period, I'm like, let's see if I want to still do this or not.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And it's been since like my team has been asking, are you going to come down? I'm like, I don't have time. Like,
And you don't have the need to. That's the
I don't
thing,
have,
right?
yeah,
Same thing with me. I haven't set eyes on my Houston property, and I'm like, when I have, I don't know if I'll ever prioritize it because you have it in cruise control mode. That's the thing.
right.
Same thing with you.
Exactly.
Your second property was also out of state, right?
It is out of state. Yes, correct.
Okay.
That is
And
in
how many
Tennessee.
times have you laid eyes on that property?
Just once.
And was that also right after you put the offer in, or was it after you closed?
After I put the offer in. I
Okay.
go during the inspection period just to make sure if it's still a yes
Yeah.
situation, and that's
Yeah.
about it.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. For those listening, some of them may have properties out of state. How do you streamline something that's out of state, right? It's you're not there. What do you do? I think this is a question people tend to ask. What do you
Right.
do? And what about concerns about what happens if something goes wrong and I'm not there?
Oh, plenty of things have gone wrong already. But you learn to manage them. You interview people, make sure you have reliable boots on the ground, and you make sure that they're happy because they're not gonna come out and help you out and work for you if we're gonna be like skimpy about paying them and stuff like that. So as long as it's within a reasonable range and everything else is negotiated. It's all about relationships in the end. So if you have a good working relationship with them, I think they'll still help you out if things go wrong, which
Yeah.
has been the case every time something has come up. So I personally don't think it's an issue. It's an issue for like maybe 10 minutes, like, oh, I have to call 3 people,
Yes.
but everything else is just taken care of after that.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I have my out of state and my in-state portfolio, my local portfolio, and I feel like when something goes wrong locally, you almost can go see it, so you're sucked in more. But if it's out of
Right.
state, you have those you're forced to build those systems, and they take care of things for you.
Yeah.
I want to talk about financing, Harsh, and so a question that a lot of people have also is, how much capital do you need? And you have the first you've used creative financing, I would say, for all your acquisitions. That's the way I look at it. So tell us about how you got creative with financing your first short-term rental and then your second one.
So the first one was a regular 30-year-old loan, the basic Fannie Freddie that everybody uses. And it was just a straightforward loan that I have.
It wasn't a 10% down, was it? For some
It
reason, I
was a
thought it was.
10% down. It was
Okay,
10% down.
so
Yeah.
do you want to tell people how you can go in with a lower down payment
Oh,
for that
yeah,
as opposed to your traditional 25%?
absolutely. As an investment, if it's an investment property, there are options and lenders that will work with you, will agree on a lower down payment than the usual. It might affect the rate a little bit, but as long as you factored that in your calculations, I don't think the bottom line overall changes
Yeah,
by that significant margin at all.
yeah,
So a lower down payment helps you, gives you more flexibility for your OpEx and CapEx, the reserves that you need
yeah.
uh, uh, to let's say renovate or furnish your units and stuff like that, and makes you a little more comfortable that you're not putting a lot of money into something that you don't know if it's going to turn out good or bad. So
Right, you have a buffer, right? And so you're so in the community that the 10% down second home loan seems like, it's just like, oh, that's what everybody does. But I know there are a lot of people listening over here who are thinking, oh, I didn't know I could do 10% down. And that's because, and you can do that in multiple markets, but maybe just not two in the same market within
yes.
a year. And that's because you're qualifying for a second home loan, right? So it's considered a second home. It's like a vacation home. There are technically a few requirements that you need to meet, but no real requirements for you to go stay in the home for a certain number of days, which is why legally you're able to use it as a short-term rental, right? And that's just funny that yeah, I know it's so second nature to you because then you went really creative. So tell us about how you financed your second property and why you did that, why you did it differently.
I think, yeah, the second property I acquired early this year, and it was truly creative. There is no loan on it that I have a loan. I don't. It's basically that you find out ways where you can assume loans, and I'm gonna just clarify, assumable loans is a very different term because that involves actually going back to a lender and putting your name on the loan, which I did not do either. You're basically assuming payments.
Yes.
It sounds very easy. Uh, it's a slightly more difficult than that, but one thing I want to assure you that it is doable. because I learned about it online and I did it. I actually did 2 deals. One deal fell through.
Yeah. One was a seller financing, the other one was a loan.
Both were the same, similar.
Both one loan assumption.
I think when we met last time, I spoke about that, but that one fell through and then the other one just went through, so it was fine.
So what motivated you to get creative about financing as opposed to going the traditional route? Because this was in a second market, you could have done another 10% down loan.
Yeah.
So what was the motivation for you? And then maybe why would the other person agree to that?
Yeah, the motivation for me was honestly, the lending environment was really bad. Even with good credit scores, you're still seeing 7, 8s, and 9s interest rate percentage-wise. And that was something that was never going to fit my calculation.
Yeah.
So that was my major motivation. Second, I was already reading about these things when I was talking to all the other real estate investors. And I was like very excited. I'm like, okay, this is easy to understand as a concept. Let me see if I can apply it. So for me, I was just like trying. And it was hard for sure. Like, because as you said, why would the seller do it, right? The sellers depends on what they're looking for. So I went back to basics. It was not just about what I want. It was about how I can help these guys. And if I can, because I'm at the end of the day, I'm still a doctor. I still have the same basic ethics. So I'm like, if I can help somebody, I'll help it and I'll present it in a way of how I can help you. And if it works out, it's a win-win for both. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't, no hard feelings. It's fine. So
Yeah, yeah. And it always has to be a win-win. But the biggest thing is like when you're in the program, and it's like when you're investing in real estate, there are ways to get creative where the numbers can still make sense, even in a high interest rate environment, right? And you figure out a solution that makes sense for the buyer where he's benefiting too. And you're able to go in with what interest rate were you able to lock in, Harsh, on 3% when otherwise you would have gotten what, an 8% interest rate? Yeah. And so suddenly the numbers make so much more sense, right? So that's a beautiful thing. So yeah, so you've been very creative about financing. Tell us before we go on to like how you then scale, because I know everyone's waiting for that. But like while we're talking about these two properties, tell us about how what your revenue looked like for these properties, gross revenue, and what how you were able to tap into like tax savings and
tax
really
savings.
get
Yeah.
better returns from it.
Yeah, so I mean, tax savings is for most of us professionals, tax savings is the major reason why a lot of us do short-term rentals, at least for the first year. And
I'm going to take it back. You don't let the tax tail wag the dog. Okay, the property has to make absolute
the
sense
property has to
by
make
itself.
sense.
Okay.
Yes, the property has to make sense. I was going to add that later. The numbers do have to make sense.
Yes.
But the primary motive also is tax savings and revenue and
Yes.
just building
That's
assets.
why you're putting your time into building systems to run a short-term rental out of state, because you're getting that extra savings, you're getting the higher revenue. Go.
Correct. So I'm sorry, can you go back to the question?
Yeah, so sorry for interrupting you, Harsh. I was like, stop. I don't want anybody to get the wrong message here. But what was your revenue like for those properties in the beginning? And then can you go over your tax numbers and how that actually helped you save on taxes?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I'm gonna go with, because the full cycle happened with the first one already. The second one, the full cycle hasn't happened. The first one, I was gonna say it was steady, and I would say 5 to 10% positive, which according to my calculations, I had predicted slightly higher, but there was more capex that was involved, which dwindled down the numbers a little bit. The second year actually is positive as per what I calculated. So those numbers are fitting exactly how it is. And this is without the tax savings. With the tax savings, it was completely positive. So that was not a problem about that.
Yeah.
And yeah, tax savings, mainly, I think I pretty much got more than my down payment back on my tax, overall W-2 taxes with the first time. The second time I haven't done taxes yet. So
yes, correct. And so that's a beautiful thing, right? So and especially when a lot of you use the 10% down second home loan product, you're putting in a lower down payment. And when tax time comes, when you're able to shelter enough clinical income to the point where your tax refund kind of matches what you put down, now you have a property that's technically infinite returns. You have your capital out and it's still cash flowing, it's still building up equity. So that's a beautiful thing. And I'm sure you'll be able to do that with the second property. And And it's true for any of you who are considering buying short-term rentals before the end of the year, because I think we're getting to the point where we have 90 days left. And that's a beautiful thing because now you have like, you have the goal and that's what you're thinking of doing. This is a year where we have 60% bonus depreciation. So it's still definitely doable. You just want to get a head start over there. But tell us a little bit, Harsh, about stress testing your deals, right? Because you said that, you had a little more in terms of operational expenses. So how do you stress test your deals when you're looking to buy short-term rentals? So anyone listening, just talk to us about how you like to do it.
Yeah, so I personally, I mean, I learned it from you. We dropped down the average daily rate and occupancy by at least 10%. But with every market now that I'm analyzing more properties, things have been very different.
Yeah.
So the rates have been different. So now I'm putting more caution to my numbers, so as to speak, and I do like 15%.
Yeah.
And then also add on like a 5 to 8% contingency, which I learned from somebody else,
Yeah.
because that is something that it's for the unknowns.
Yeah.
Like the random things that happen, whether there's a hurricane. Speaking of, there is a hurricane happening right now in
Yeah.
Panhandle anyway. So things like that, which can actually increase your cost without any expectation. So I factor in a 5 to 10% contingency extra, and still
Perfect.
see if it makes sense.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people ask that question, how do you know how much cash reserves to hold? And so that's your cash buffer that you like to hold for emergencies. That's beautiful. And so going back to that creative financing, because I think of it like, so you may not look at it that way, but your first STR was 10% down. The second one was a loan assumption. And now you are, and this is another way to go creative, right? It's a joint venture. When you are a general partner in deals, that's what you're doing. That's what allowed you to scale. That's another way of being creative with financing, because you're putting your sweat equity in and you're getting capital partners. So tell us about that journey, right? And so what have you done since then? And what made you pivot towards that?
Right. So I like short-term rentals. They can be a little difficult to manage sometimes if you accumulate a lot of them. So I was curious about multifamily and the concept of like vertically scaling, and how things are vertically integrated with most developers and syndicators. So I wanted to deep dive about it. So I started reading more, and I was like, okay, it's pretty much the same amount of work that you put for one unit, and then you can do it for 20 units or 30 units, whatever it is. So with better returns, maybe. Not always true, but calculation wise, we hope always that it's better returns. So that's why I started diving into that side of things. And education again was the first step of understanding, because if I don't understand, my investors don't understand, and I can't explain it to them. So if you can't explain it to somebody else, like an 8-year-old kid, they're not going to invest with you. That's what I learned in my journey in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I made sure that I put more time towards my education, running numbers, making connections, and partnering with people strategically to see how I can help other people benefit from this. There are so many friends, family, distant friends who have new connections that I've made, who want to invest, but they don't know how to invest. They don't have opportunities, and they didn't know the possibilities of syndications and stuff like that. So I was just excited to bring that to them.
That's beautiful. And so interestingly, like I talk about the three avatars for a real estate investor, the passive person, the hustler, which I think I was a hustler, hustled for a little bit and then moved everything to passive. I see you as even when you speak, right? Oh, I wanted to explore this whole creative financing loan assumption thing. Then I was like, let me go explore the general partner route. So you're a constant learner and you have that entrepreneur's mindset. And so you thrive in this environment, which is a beautiful thing. For those who are thinking about, okay, scaling and time, can you share some resources and softwares that you think, even strategies or practices that help you the most that would benefit people who are listening?
Yeah, I think there are so many. If somebody's interested in short-term rental management, softwares like OwnerRez, Price Labs, Hospitable, they make your life really easy in terms of automations, like sending out messages, communications, basic stuff, pricing. I do it like once a week. Depends if it's a slow season, then I do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's already booked out, then I don't look at it for 2 months. So it
Yeah.
doesn't like that. That's a variability there for like basic day-to-day management of a short-term rental. In terms of time management, I think everybody has the same 24 hours. Somebody's job is busier than the other person. But I've also noticed like we all spend a lot more time on our phones. So something that I learned
Netflix, that's what I would do. If I didn't do
and
anything
Netflix.
fruitful, I'd be on Netflix.
Yeah. Uh, so the technique that I learned was the Pomodoro technique. It was, I think, on a podcast or a conference or something. I just put like assign a task 45 minutes and then do 15 minutes break, whatever it is, and then make a list, checklist, and then keep checking them off. And that just helps me stay on track. And I've realized the times or the months that I've not done it, I've had more missing tasks compared to the months that I have done it. So that just helps me keep on track. And I still like work at the hospital. I still go see patients and stuff. So after I come back home, I do all these other stuff.
That's awesome. And for some of you listening who are thinking, I'm not very techie, that's me. I need my 9-year-old to do some of the tech stuff for me. And so that's why if you're considering joining the program, Adrian, can you drop the links in chat on Facebook, YouTube, and in here for people who are considering joining the program because the doors are now open. We have a done for you part of a component in the one-on-one where Dr. Kumar can go in and help you integrate like a lot of these softwares together so that you're not trying to figure it out. And so you have as much or as little support as you need over there. You can titrate that. But Harsh, as we wrap up, and I have a few questions about, your future and advice that you have for people, but can you tell people listening how the program helped you, right? You look at your journey today and where you were 2 years ago, how would you say that the program really helped you?
I think it gave me a different path to life. I was going on a different path and opened doors that I never even saw existed. And I'm
Yeah.
going to be very frank about this, just because the learning, the support system, the guidance within the community, even I'm going to be honest, personal guidance from you. Like I've just randomly texted and be like, hey, I need advice.
Yeah,
Like, what should I do?
absolutely.
So, and you were always there. So I'm very appreciative of that. And so I think for somebody who is really just starting out, it's a well-structured program that you're gonna have the next step and the next step and the next step. Like in residency, you have next rotations and everything is like set up. All you have to do is just do it, and that's about it. So I would definitely recommend that to somebody who's just starting out. And then there's always a path that they can build on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So just big picture, zoom out for us for a minute. 2 years ago, Harsh versus Harsh today. How do you think about medicine and life differently now? Like how has the role, I mean, we all love medicine and that's why we're here, but how are you looking at that differently? How are you looking at life differently, like big picture?
I mean, I think I'm looking at it in a way where it's not the only thing. Like I love taking care of patients, but I do want to make sure that I have time for things I love doing,
Yeah,
whether it's time for family, whether it's time for traveling, and then few other things where I don't want that to be the only source of income that I have,
yeah.
uh, is because life is not infinite and things happen. So if I were to lose this hand, how am I going to see patients? I don't know. So I need to know some other skill where I can capitalize on. And those things are something that I learned in these last couple of years. And I'm like, yeah, we should learn other skills. So that's why I've been doing this.
What are your plans for the future, Harsh? You've
Uh,
already done so much in 2 years. Like I'm pretty sure you're trying to learn something new at this point.
I am.
Okay, tell us
Uh,
what's new with you.
No, I'm just learning more on the operational side of things for multifamily.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to learn, and also underwriting for large multifamily.
yeah.
But learning is one thing that I'm gonna always keep doing. So
Yeah, I know you will. I know you will. And last, parting words of wisdom. I'm going to go into Q&A next because people have
sure.
dropped a lot of questions and I want to get to it. And those of you waiting to learn more about the program, we'll do it right after we let Harsh go. But words of advice for people who are thinking about starting and it's scary and the environment and everything that they're hearing. What would you want to share with them?
I mean, it's honestly just like everything else you've done in the first time, first IV line, first surgery, first cath, whichever field you're in, or if you're in software's first program that you've developed, I don't know. Uh, it may or may not work, but I think having a coach or a guide helps. And I was lucky enough to have Param in that situation where we didn't know each other before at all, and our paths just crossed. And I would definitely have, if somebody doesn't have time and doesn't know what to do, this is well structured. I didn't have to think about things. It's like always like every week had a next step built in for the next week. So I always had something to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Harsh. I was hoping you'd give more philosophical advice, but that works too. I appreciate that. So for me, it's always like, start before you're ready or something like that. But no, this helps. No, it's so right. Like at this point, I wouldn't go and do something new without having someone mentor me who's already done that and is where I want to be a few years from now. And
Yeah,
that makes
they've walked the
absolute
walk,
sense.
they've done talk the talk. It's just you just have to, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just have to do whatever you have already done it. You already done it for
Exactly.
many years.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, let's go into Q&A. Don't want to keep people waiting. But Robin, I'm so excited to see you guys in the program. You, Arvind, a lot of you are on here. I'm going to do the program walkthrough, and that's going to be helpful for all of you also in terms of the resources available to you. I have a question. People are asking about Dallas. I may be in Dallas this weekend, guys. I'm not sure yet. I will keep everyone posted. We may have like an in-person get together for the community. That would be awesome. And so there's a question from Aim High, which says, Harsh, can you share a little bit more about the offer that you made to what the offer was put into? I'm wondering if this has to do with the loan assumption, the way you made the offer. I'm not sure.
Uh, as for the creative finance deal,
I think so. I think maybe I'm not 100% sure, but you can unmute and ask this question, Aim High, if you're on here. But it seems like they want to know how you would present the offer of creative financing to someone if the seller isn't thinking about the assumable loan. How would you present that? Is what I'm making of that. Oh, you're
I
on
could
here.
just say, yeah, I
Yes,
could
go
just say.
ahead.
So that was basically the very first opening remark, and the STR had not been mentioned yet. So then I assumed
Oh,
like
got
it
it.
was with your first STR in Florida. So that got answered.
oh,
Thank you.
Got it. Got it. No worries. So Maisha's question is, if you don't see the properties, then you won't be able to get the benefits of short-term of materially participating in your short-term rental. Do you want to take that, Harsh?
yeah. Materially participating doesn't always mean being on the property. It does include things like you're working towards it directly or indirectly. So if I'm making calls to a furniture company and having furniture delivered, booking everything online, researching and those things, they still count as material participation. I don't have to be the cleaner every day. Although I know some people who own short-term rentals from across the street, they are their own cleaner. There's nothing wrong about it, but
Yeah.
you don't have to do that. As long as you meet the criteria where your hours are more than everybody else's, that's all you need.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's the same thing for people who are also qualifying for real estate professional status. They can do it and they can handle rehabs from far away. You don't have to be local. You just have to be intentional about logging your hours, and it has to be ordinary and necessary. That's something that the IRS looks into. You can't log 10 hours for something that would ordinarily take an hour. And we have a whole module where we talk about what counts, what doesn't count, what's considered gray area. And I work very closely with very conservative CPAs. And so I think most of us in the community tend to be very, very conservative about how we log those hours.
Right.
Bryn has a question. It is, how do you find the properties, and how do you finance them as a second home? Those are two parts of her question.
So finding the properties, I think, is first comes down to selecting the market. Everybody has a different preference. Some people are like, I want to be within a driving distance to the property. Some people are like, I don't care where it is, as long as it makes sense. Some people want a vacation home. Some people don't want a vacation home. So that's something that you'll have to decide pretty much on your own or with help of a mentor, however you prefer. And I think the second part of that question is, wait, can you say the second part of the question?
The second part was, how do you finance them as
Oh,
a
yeah,
the
second home.
second home?
Yeah. So as I think when you start talking to lenders, you can always tell them that, hey, I'm looking for a second loan option, second home, like investment property. They know about this. They're not even going to argue against it. They will definitely just underwrite it as a second home for you with 10% down.
Yeah, yeah. And just to piggyback onto that, within the program, we have agents who can help you with short-term rentals, long-term rentals, and multifamily because they are very different agents in terms of their niche. And your agent can be, I think, sometimes you use your agent to get the lender, right? Because they work closely with local
Yes.
lenders. But within the program, we also have national lenders who can assist you, and you have multiple options. And we always say do your own due diligence. Awesome. I'm going to put a hard stop at 5:45 for her. So we have 3 more minutes. Let me see if I can prioritize the top questions because you have tons of questions. A lot of them are about the loan assumption, Harsh.
Right.
Do you have to put something down? How big was your down payment and how large is the property? And I think there's a second part to that. Can you do that for long-term rentals also if you want to take that?
You could do that for any property. Creative financing has nothing to do with short or long term. How you run the property is your choice. As long as, so financing is just how you are assuming that loan. You technically don't have to put anything down, but that's in like 30% of the cases where the seller is going to be like, yes, I don't care if you don't put anything down. I did put money down in that situation, just to be fair to the seller, because I'm not trying to do wrongful things to somebody else. I was just gonna do the deal as I would do with a lender, but just is assuming the loan. That's about it.
Yeah, I think we have some more questions about the first deal. Harsh, can you tell people the numbers of your first deal, what your cash flow was? And then we can deep dive more into your current portfolio, how many properties you have.
So
And
the first deal, cash flow was about, I was gonna say it's break even or at least 5% positive.
yeah.
Uh, uh, and that is with regards to the debt that I had, the loan that was on the
Mhm.
property, which is all including the capex, extra maintenance, cleaning, all of that. So I was gonna say 5 to 8% was the first year.
Yeah.
The second year is about to end in like 3-4 months. So, but so far it's looking good.
What is the price of that first property and what was your down payment? If you can just help people with that.
Sure. 315 was the price and 10% down.
And then if you want to just talk about the price of your second property and what your down payment, approximate numbers, it doesn't have to be absolutely accurate, but
Yes.
whatever you're
Still
comfortable sharing.
still 10% down, and it's about 550.
Okay. And can you talk about, if you're comfortable sharing, what your current portfolio looks like, and what the location of those assets is and how many doors?
The doors, if I combine it with uh the syndication deals that I'm working on, uh that's gonna be close to 200 doors that I'm actively co-GPing on. Yeah.
And how many actual assets would that be in the markets, Harsh? Because I believe a lot of these are also out of state for you.
Yes, there's the properties are in multiple states actually, in the Northeast, Vermont, South Dakota, Texas, Florida, all over.
Okay, and then we'll just take one last question. I think we're close to the end. So Animesh, your question is, how does the 20% drop in bonus depreciation in 2025 impact the tax benefits? You can take this, Harsh, if you want to. Are the tax benefits only on the first year? And then I can piggyback onto it if you want to just start off talking about that. What about year 2 and beyond?
Well, I think you're allowed to take it only once. So there's
Yeah.
nothing like you do technically if you take bonus depreciation. I would say with the current, and this is political scenario and how things are fading, this was a bill that was introduced way in the past, so this is nothing new. The yearly 20% drop was decided maybe 4 years ago. So I would say at this point, I would rather take the 20% drop rather than wait for 3 years and be at 0%,
Yeah,
which I
so
don't know what's going to happen. So
exactly. Very valid points. And so this year we have 60% bonus depreciation that drops to 40% next year. But I think the good thing is that when you acquire a property, that's what determines how much you can bonus depreciate it. So ideally for most people in short-term rentals, year 1, when you acquire a property, that's the easiest year to materially participate in the property, which is why, in the first year of acquisition, because you're spending more time than anybody else just because acquisition takes much longer, right? So you want to do it in year 1. And so if you acquired the property this year and for some reason, you're not able to materially participate, although you want to because it's the easiest, you are materially participating in a following year when you bonus depreciate it, you still get 60% bonus depreciation because you acquired it in this year. That's true for long-term rentals and short-term rentals. And I think, thank you so much, Harsh. We'll stop here because I still see questions popping in, but this was super, super helpful. Thank you so much for doing this. We're going to let you go. I'm going to, thank you so much, Harsh. I'm going to go ahead and just go over the program walkthrough, guys, for those of you who are considering the program, those of you who are in the program, just so that you know what's available to you. But again, like I said, it's always such a pleasure talking to you, Harsh. I think of you as, and I know you've come in and you've coached on creative financing, but everything that you've acquired in different ways is ways to go in with lesser of your own capital, and then to just go and acquire more. I think we forgot to get from you. If you're still here, Harsh, if you can drop in the chat what your down payment was on that second property, whatever you're willing to share. I think someone was specifically asking for the down payment number so they could understand that.
10%. Yeah.
For the second one also.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, awesome. I didn't remember that from our previous conversations. Okay, perfect. You may have already mentioned that. Sorry about that. Okay, guys, I know there are always tons of questions. Feel free to drop it in the chat if you're listening to this on Facebook, and I'll try to go in there and answer questions. And if Harsh is available, he'll do that. But in the interest of time, let's just keep going ahead, guys. Just wanted to give you, I know a lot of people have had tons of questions. I've hopped on multiple calls. I've basically been on calls all day about people who have questions about the program. So it just makes sense to go over it in this setting so that all of you can benefit from it. But within the program, the way it's structured is that we have the foundational courses, which is true for any part of real estate, right? It's how do you build your strategy? How do you run your numbers? What calculators do you use? How are you boosting returns? How do you finance? And then taxes and accounting and asset protection, all of those things. But we also have verticals that are unique to short-term rentals and mid-term rentals and large multifamily, where that's running in parallel with the foundation courses. Because for a lot of you who are thinking about short-term rentals, you want to acquire something before the end of the year and place it in service and at least have it rented out twice before the end of the year to be able to show material participation and bonus depreciated. So yes, you will log your hours. And I think there was a question in there for what software do you use? Within our program, we use Clockify and Reps Tracker. Some people like to hold it on Excel. There's so many different ways to do it, but you want to meet the criteria, legally, right? So 100 hours and more than anyone else is the easiest one to meet. But as you're doing all this, you want to do this systematically. And so we run all these verticals parallel to the foundational courses so that if you're thinking short-term rentals, you have adequate time to, before the end of the year, acquire it, place it in service, and meet those criteria. If you're thinking large multifamily, a lot of you already have a few rentals and you're looking to scale, then we have our coaches, Dr. Sidhu and Dr. Agarwal. They have 70 to 100 units, multifamily units that they own mostly individually, but also in partnership with family members and friends, right? And so Dr. Sidhu owns her own, she employs her property manager, same thing with Dr. Agarwal, very hands-on in asset management. So they're there to guide you. And then Dr. Hang is our midterm rental coach, kind of talks about her journey. And there is a link to the program. Guys, don't go to the waitlist link anymore, but there's a link to the program in the chat. Make sure you take a look at that. But the way the program is structured is that we have the educational modules, and you will have lifetime access to all the educational modules. You will have lifetime access to our agent network when you join the program. And we also have weekly group coaching calls. So that's going to be, we try to have 2 calls a week, one on Sundays and one during the weekdays. And that's because we want to cater to everyone across different time zones. And that's where you're actually getting the live support, right? Our live calls start the first week of October and they go on for about 4 months. And that's where you're coming in, we're coaching you, but we're also opening it up to Q&A where we get to answer a lot of your questions. So whatever you're struggling with, even if it isn't related to that week's topic, you're getting your questions answered, right? And that's also why we keep the group really small, so we're able to get everyone's questions answered. Yeah, like Harsh mentioned, it's very structured, right? We go through it step by step by step. If you listen to the 3-day event, that's what we try to do within the 3-day event also. But that's a more higher level overview. When you go into the program, you have multiple submodules each week, so you can pick and choose what you want to listen to. But it really goes in depth into everything that's involved, and it's very structured, and it kind of leads you through the whole process, right? And we do that in the foundational course. We also do it for short-term rentals, and the same thing for multifamily if that's what you're looking to doing. So we personalize it, we help you build strategy, and then we take it on to implementation, right? And you have support, you have a private Facebook community that you're a part of, over there, that's where 24/7 you have support from me, the coaches, and I believe Harsh is in there also. There are other students in there who are answering your questions. We have pods, WhatsApp groups for certain markets where we have a ton of students investing. So for, say, the Florida markets or for the Smokies markets where we have a lot of short-term rentals, we have specific pods where people are sharing resources, answering questions. And so this is how you get 24/7 support. You have access to those WhatsApp groups. I believe that's also going to be lifetime access. Once you're in there, you're there. And it's the same thing with the Facebook community to some extent. You have at least a few years of access within it, and lifetime access to our agent network and to the educational modules. So it's just a live session that have that you have access to for, say, about 4 months when you're within the cohort. And then tons of worksheets, tons of guides. All of that is geared towards so if you're thinking, oh, I want to create an LLC and I want to go to the Secretary of State website and do it myself, there's a guide for that. If you're thinking, how do I make sure I'm not missing any deductions and I'm optimizing taxes? There is an Excel spreadsheet over there for you for your LLC, for your rental, right? Those are two different things. If you're thinking, I want to furnish my short-term rental, how do I make sure I've gotten everything? There's a checklist for that. There are templates for how do I respond to guests? How can I automate this whole process so that I'm not sitting and responding to people? How do I make sure I have a guest book that covers everything? There's basically like building your team, a short-term rental roadmap, tons of resources in there, whichever direction you choose to go, including tons of calculators some of them are short-term rental specific, some of them are specific to rehabs. If I'm putting money in, am I making money on this? Is it profitable? Some of them are specific to large multifamily, right? There's a quick and dirty analysis where I'm just starting out. How do I know this is profitable? And then there's the more detailed spreadsheet. Things you don't think you even need. But again, this is where you're de-risking your portfolio, right? The agent network I talked about, you have lifetime access to them, and we have specific agents for long-term, short-term rentals and multifamily. Same thing with our guest speakers. Our guest speakers are tax and asset protection experts, and we already have them lined up for the next cohort. This is where you have the ability to ask them questions specific to your scenario. And so it's not it's just listening to something and then coming up with your plan. You have the ability to tailor it to what makes sense for you. And I think the agent network is probably something that we're really proud of. We're constantly getting feedback and streamlining that to make sure that there's accountability there. And we are working with agents who are really assisting our community per se. Okay. And then, guys, if you have any other questions specific to the program, please drop it in the chat. But like I said, we have tons of guest speakers. We already have them lined up for the next cohort. You had a lot of questions about what counts and how do you audit proof yourself. I think this is very relevant to most professionals. You want to make sure you're doing things the right way, that you're super conservative. And we are, there's a lot of time we spend on tax strategy within the community because that's where we see a lot of questions. If I'm traveling to the property and I'm flying all the way from Chicago to Florida, do those hours count? And I'll try to give you my perspective on what I've learned from the most conservative CPAs. And then again, you're going to take that and go to your CPA and find someone who is knowledgeable, but also someone who's going to be able to guide you. But I always say you are your best advocate, so I want you to go in knowing what to ask and having a strategy, and then going and personalizing it with your professionals. But the end result of all of this is, and this is what some of our students have been able to do, is to take a property. This is a short-term rental, right? So they don't just go and rent it out. They're taking it. She was able to do a rehab, make it look so, really enhance the guest experience. And all of the support systems within the community is geared towards helping you do this. And, a lot of, like I mentioned, the last 90 days of the year is when there's a lot of momentum for people who are interested in short-term rentals. And it's because you want to, make sure you're materially participating, getting those tax benefits, but also make sure you're buying the right property. That makes sense, right? You don't want to have the tax tail wag the dog. That's the most important thing. You want to buy a property that's profitable, but also be able to tap into those advanced tax strategies if you want to. Now, I've hopped on tons of calls for the one-on-one program. We have only one spot left because we only take in 5 to 7 at this point. We're only taking 5 to 7 members for the one-on-one program, and that's because of the coach calendars. Because some of them are still working full time, and so we only have so much capacity. But the question I always get is like, how is the one-on-one program beneficial? At this point, I've had, whenever I coach, I always coach one-on-one in addition to group. And that's because I just think that my coach is able to see blind spots that I'm not able to see, right? When you are in a group setting, oftentimes you're asking questions that you know to ask, but in the one-on-one setting, it's almost someone looking at your overall roadmap, looking at your portfolio and identifying the blind spots you're not able to see. So it's from a mindset perspective, it's from really, helping you take action more rapidly, but then you also see that impact in the outcomes. Just examples of some of our students within the one-on-one coaching program. Pamela, just negotiating in the first month, she was able to save 15K and had the seller pay 15K towards closing costs, right? And so oftentimes we're thinking about the ROI, and the ROI is honestly, if you're depending on how you're scaling, it's off the charts. Vanessa was able to qualify for real estate professional status and scale to 28 doors, and that's through multifamily units that she was able to acquire and significantly reduce the tax burden for her spouse. And same story, we've had other students who've been through other programs and they get into the one-on-one program and they're really going from 1 property to 7 in a short span. That's because they're really able to take action, right? I feel like Mary was on the call also. I'm not sure. I just saw someone in Scrubs. I think it was Mary, but Mary and Josh were able to do something similar, right? Using short-term rentals to really tap into those tax savings and generate higher revenue. And then she's also been using creative financing to scale. Yeah, so just stories of physicians just like you who've been able to do similar things. And I hope that inspires you. So a lot of questions I've gotten in the last few days has been, what is the time commitment? I think Harsh touched upon this briefly, but just to recap, it's typically anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a week, and it depends on how much you're underwriting, how many offers you're putting in. But I would say at least 2 hours towards education, 1 to listen to the educational module, and an hour to hop on the group coaching call. And then depending on how many offers you're putting in, that could vary a little bit, right? And then there was a question about what if you can't keep up? There was a bonus where if you joined the first 2 days, you were able to hop onto the spring cohort also. For those of you who've been able to do that, that works. But you have lifetime access to the educational content, all upgraded material, all the all the replays for any of the new cohorts that's uploaded on there also, so you will always have access to it. And it's the same thing for the agent network. You can always come back a year from now and say, hey, I'm exploring, and some of our students are doing this. They'll say, okay, I acquired a few short-term rentals. Now I want to think of multifamily in the Midwest. Can you connect us to your agent? And you have access to it, right? As far as spouses are always encouraged to join together. When you join the program, your spouse is automatically enrolled. So if they're willing and they're interested, bring them. We highly recommend doing it together. We've spoken to a few physicians when they started off, they were completely new to real estate investing. So can it work for a newbie? Yes. And like I said, we do have a 30-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. And the reason we do that is because I know that this program is super, super powerful. And if that's the barrier, right? If you're thinking about ROI, if you're thinking about, okay, what if it doesn't work out? Then I don't want you to have that barrier. And so that's what we do. And for those of you who already have invested in a syndication or already have a rental, the entire program may be tax deductible. For those of you who don't have, are starting from scratch, it may be, but I want you to really talk to your CPA because that's a gray zone area. Every CPA looks at it differently. Right? Okay, what else? We're towards the end, guys. And so if you have any questions, keep dropping them in the chat. I'm going to get to them towards the end. But, and then for those of you who are already in the program, I'm hoping this gives you an idea of everything that's available to you within the program. You've probably received access already, so I would highly recommend watching module 1 and 2 before you hop on our first live call. And you can, as you walk through the process, if you want to connect with agents, you have the ability to do with that, guys. You're already in there. But the whole point is to walk you through that process, right? Starting with strategy, moving on to implementation, and then you have the agents who are assisting you with implementation, and then scaling. Like I said, you have the ability to hop on one-on-one calls if you want to also, and that's because sometimes you just want it done for you. I would want that, and so you have the ability to do that. We do have, I talked about the Market Buddy system where you have these pods where you're connecting with people who are in the same market and sharing resources. I think that's a very valuable part of what the community offers. We have tons of calculators. We have, you have access to short-term rental, tons of resources for short-term rentals because we really want to focus on that. We have coaches who are specifically coaching on that because a lot of you are interested in it. These are some of the resources I talked about in terms of bookkeeping, asset management. This is for large multifamily asset management. These are things you may not even think you need, but they're really going to help you keep track of things, right? You're looking at your business, your real estate portfolio after a while like a business, and you really want to make sure you're optimized. Same thing with bookkeeping. You can save tons, thousands of dollars. I've lost thousands of dollars because I wasn't doing bookkeeping, right? Tens of thousands of dollars. And so you have those resources. Dr. Hang is our midterm rental coach. She coaches on how to generate, so she was able to get up to 10,000 in revenue from a single family home that she runs as a midterm rental. And so what she talks about is like the midterm rental insurance clients and how she's able to tap into that network and really boost her returns, right? So it's also about the avatar of the midterm rental clients that you're looking at when you're building out your portfolio. Okay. And just to wrap it up, guys, we're always the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And the point of the community is to give you a whole different perspective by surrounding yourself with people who are thinking like you, right? Who are thinking differently. This is not something I heard when I was at work or when I was hanging out with friends. People don't talk about it. But I feel like this is a very critical part of what we do in our lives, our financial security, our, how we invest. And so you're surrounding yourself with people who are looking to grow and contribute. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Greater than 40% of people in the last 2 years cohort locked their first property within the first 4 weeks, and they've sheltered millions of dollars of income from taxes over those years. And this is the last year for 60% bonus depreciation. You have the last 90 days to take action. So if you've been thinking about it, then this may be the year that you want to hop in. The clock is ticking and take action. But like I said, it's always going to be about the property, right? Never really just about the tax savings. And for those of you thinking about ROI, I would have done that. I would say 10 years ago, that would have been the biggest consideration. Even if you end up buying a single long-term rental, know that, and these were slides I usually had in the 10X event. I took them out this time. Know that over time, there's this snowball effect, right? Over time, the equity you're building in the property just keeps increasing. And that's because, real estate is an inflation adjusted asset. And just one long-term rental that's breaking even today can generate over 6 figures in the next 10 years. And this is it's a whole mindset thing, right? It's shifting the trajectory of your life. And so I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in coaching, and it's changed the direction of my life. And I know that this program will do the same for you. And it's not just about net worth. It's about the experiences. It's about decades of having that freedom and autonomy. And I would say more than freedom, what was really important to me was security, right? Financial security. And so what are you going to do for that? And we can figure it out ourselves. I figured it out myself. It took me 10 years to get to this point where I was really understanding what I was doing. Or you can learn with mentorship and community, and you can just model success, right? And that's the point of the program. I mentioned this already, guys. We have a payment plan that's going out, that's starting tomorrow. And so you can get started for as little as $9.99, and you have a 30-day money back guarantee. So there's literally no reason for you to say this is not the time for it. And there is the time value of money, and so there's an opportunity cost that to starting early, and I want you to tap into it. There is also, for those of you, many of you have probably been to the Physician Freedom Summit. We hosted it twice. We had so many physician entrepreneurs and investors come and talk about their journeys and how they got to financial freedom through entrepreneurship and real estate. And you will have free access to those resources, and you will get emails talking about that. But I think the most important takeaway, if you've been listening to the 10X event, if you've been listening to any of our talks, is that, we're at this point in the market cycle, right? And it doesn't feel like that because single family homes didn't really price correct this cycle. Multifamily did. But we're at the point of maximum opportunity. And this is the time, if there was a time to educate yourself, this is the time to educate yourself. And like they say, every past downturn looks like an opportunity, and every future market downturn looks like a risk. But this is the time of maximum opportunity. And this is the time to really educate yourself and take advantage. And the whole point is to really shift the point of financial freedom and security to a few decades earlier, right? That's the whole point of what we're doing. So, okay, with that, I'm going to stop and we'll get to Q&A, guys. Okay, let me see. Awesome. There are a lot of people thanking Harsh. Hi, Arvind, Robin, you guys are still on here. Guys, once I'm done with the Q&A, we can unmute. If you have any questions about the program, because you're already in there, we can get to them specifically. So let me just quickly wrap up the questions. Adrian, if there are other questions that people are popping into Facebook or YouTube, please, can you drop them in here? I'll try to get to them. And then we can just talk about the program per se. Okay. Hey, oh, Jennifer, just piggybacking onto your question, the tax benefits are ongoing. Bonus depreciation is something you do only once. Yes, you bonus depreciate only once, and that is in year one. That's when you're able to bonus depreciate anything that has a useful life less than 20 years, right? That's the only thing. So anything that has a useful life that the IRS considers having a useful life of 5 years, 7.5 years, 15 years, you can bonus depreciate. You can take all of that as losses in year one, but you still have the 27.5-year property that you're depreciating over time, right? And so it's not as huge a loss in future year bonus depreciation as you think it is. I actually have a slide explaining it. I don't have that on hand. But what happens is that although you get to take a bulk of, so if you buy a property worth $400,000, and 200 in the building basis is $275,000, you may depreciate $100,000 of that in year one, right? And you still have close to another $175,000 that you're depreciating over 27.5 years. So it's not like you have zero depreciation in following years. It's just that you take the bulk of the depreciation upfront. That's it. I hope that made sense. So Sunil, what is bonus depreciation? So, real estate investors get to take losses, paper losses every year. And how it works is if I purchased a property for $400,000 and the land is $100,000, the building is considered to be, and if the building is $300,000, right? So I get to depreciate the building over 27.5 years or 39 years, depending on what kind of property it is. And that shows up as a paper loss on my, on my taxes, right? And the advantage is that I could have cash flow from that property that goes into my pocket, but because on paper I have losses, that offsets my cash flow and all of my income from real estate becomes tax-free. That becomes really powerful once you're generating like 6 figures in passive income, because you're putting 6 figures into your pocket, you're using it, but it's tax-free income. And that's the beauty of real estate. And bonus depreciation is, this was based on the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, where you were able to, if you acquired a property after September 2017, between then and end of December 2022, you had 100% bonus depreciation. So you could take a lot of the losses, that depreciation upfront, and anything that had a useful life less than 20 years, you could take upfront, right? And now that started phasing out. 2023, we had 80% bonus depreciation. 2024, we have 60% bonus depreciation, and then next year starts phasing out, right? So your tax savings starts dropping once that starts phasing out. That's what we're talking about. So Jennifer, I hope I answered the second part of your question. You said, can you take all 27 years worth of depreciation in year one rather than spreading it out? So you are not taking all of it. You're taking the depreciable basis that has a useful life less than 20 years, right? So you still have, and it's not the bulk of the depreciation. You are taking maybe approximately 25% of the purchase price ends up being what you're taking in year one. The other 50%, you're still depreciating over 27.5 years or 39 years. Okay, perfect. Okay, Hanel, I guess the question is there an option to transition to one-on-one coaching in the future after taking the course without the one-on-one coaching? That's tricky, Hanel, because typically we fill up the one-on-one really quickly and we only have limited spots. That's the only challenge. So then it becomes hard to transition. So if you're considering it, I would give it a hard thought and sign up sooner rather than later, because we are down to the last spot for the one-on-one. And there's another question. Can you run through the slides again? If you're still on here, do you want to specifically ask me which slide if there were a few slides you wanted me to go over, I could. Hey, Spencer, nice to see you on here. I'm excited to see you within the program again. Perfect. Thank you, Adrian. Okay, and Hanel, the pop-up Facebook group is still open. Yes, we haven't archived it. We're going to keep it open till Thursday, so you still have the ability to go and listen to things when I click the link in my email today. Oh, Adrian, can you drop a link to the pop-up Facebook group in here for Hanel so she's able to get in there? Okay, I think the team has already answered that. Awesome. I hope that was helpful, Hanel. And okay, so there's another question which says, if you buy a house, then can you use bonus depreciation, or is it only for investment properties? Yes, it's only for investment properties, guys. Robin, is the schedule for the program calls on the dashboard? So the schedule for the cohort, the coaching program, Adrian's going to send that out. I'm working with him to finalize the coach calendars, but we'll have it sent out to you before the end of the week, at least a tentative schedule, so you know when to hop on those calls. Okay, guys, that is awesome. Thank you guys for being so patient with me and staying on. If oh my God, so many of you are still on. Guys, I have time for more Q&A. I probably will have a hard stop at 6:30, but if anyone has, because I know this is a very confusing topic, but if anyone has any questions about short-term rentals or the tax strategy part of it, anything that I can answer, just raise your hand or drop it in the chat and we can have a conversation. So let's see. How do I switch my mode? Sure. So now we're getting questions specific to the program. Access to Kajabi, you should have, Hanal, Indra can send you, an email, or she can even drop it in the chat for you. You should have received an email with access to Kajabi, but otherwise, Indra will help you with that. Hey, Robin, do you have recommendations for cost segregation studies? Yes. So there are multiple options. You can get a virtual cost segregation, you can get an in-person cost segregation, or you can get you can do a virtual study. Or I'm sorry, you can do a DIY cost segregation study. I highly recommend, just based on my experience in the last few years, either getting a virtual study or getting an engineered in-person cost segregation study. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in there. It's actually Generational Wealth MD .com/ I believe 1031. If you do 1031, that'll get you to a form that you can fill out, Robin, where we can connect you to our cost segregator, who we really trust because she also educates. That's an option, but you can also use online cost segregation studies. Online, you can use online tools such as I'm trying to remember, kbkg.com is one. There's another one. There are a few, and I would highly recommend talking to your CPA to see what they're comfortable using. If it's a property that has less than 500,000 of depreciable basis, you could get away with a DIY study and getting audit protection. But again, I would price both and see what you're comfortable with. And if the price difference isn't too much, I highly recommend doing an engineered study. Okay, so there is another very interesting questions, guys. I love this. So Tasmia, hi Tasmia. Your question is cost segregation the same as bonus depreciation? Excellent question. So bonus depreciation, if you understand the concept, in order to bonus depreciate, like I said, you're bonus depreciating all the components that have less than 20 years of useful life. You have to take everything in the building. The cost segregation study just divides it up and says, this is what you can allocate to 5 years of useful life. This is what is in the building that has 15 years of useful life. And this is what has 27.5 years. So you need to break it down first to then take out the things that have less than 20-year useful life and bonus depreciate them, right? And so cost segregation studies are what you use to be able to bonus depreciate, right? So they're essentially two peas in a pod kind of thing. Hanel, could you add the link again for the Facebook group? Oh, I think Indra dropped it in there for you again. Oh, you dropped the call and came back in. No worries. I know it's so late for some of you. I'm still impressed to see so many of you on here. Yeah, only to have the last few comments, and Indra has dropped it in for you. Thank you so much, Indra. Yeah, you didn't have to stay on this late, but I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, let me see. I think I'm skipping a few questions. Okay, so Indra, Adrian, can you drop a link to the coaching program in the chat? There are people who are asking for that link. Awesome. Yes, Robin, I'm so excited for all of you in there. Can't wait to connect with all of you and see you all take massive, massive action. So there's another question about people on a visa and can they avail the tax benefits? And so that's a great question. I feel like every day I'm talking to one person at least who's on a visa who wants to know if they can benefit from it. Now, two parts to that question, right? If you're on an H-1B visa, can you invest in real estate? And the answer is absolutely, right? So you can invest in long-term rentals, you can invest in short-term rentals as long as you're not active in them, right? Because if you're on an H-1B visa, there are certain requirements, there are certain parameters for the job that you do that need to be met, and that's an important thing. So the question then becomes, if you have a spouse who has an H-4 EAD, they may be able to invest in short-term rentals and materially participate to get tax savings that can be used to shelter your income. But if you're on an H-1B visa, I highly recommend talking to your immigration attorney before considering going the active route, right? Because that's then considered a business if you're trying to get if you're trying to shelter your W-2 income from taxes. So you can do it if you have a spouse who has an H-4 EAD, but if you're on an H-1B visa, then technically you want to be very, very careful before you start going the active route and making those real estate losses active losses that you can take against your W-2 income. Now, the second part of that question is, the question was, can you still avail tax benefits? You don't get to avail those advanced tax strategies where you're sheltering your W-2 income from taxes unless you have a spouse with an H-4 EAD, but you are able to still tap into the tax efficiencies of real estate. You can still get depreciation, right? You can still shelter your cash flow from taxes. So if all the cash flow from a real estate portfolio is still tax-free, you can still go in and do a cash out refinance. That's tax free. You're still able to do 1031 exchanges. So you have all of the tax benefits except for the short-term rental, material participation, and real estate professional status advanced tax strategies, unless you have a spouse who has an H-4 EAD. I hope that answers the question. Again, please talk to your CPA and your attorney about that. So I have another question. Some of these are direct messages, so I'm just going to keep them anonymous because I'm not sure if that was intentional or not. Oftentimes it isn't, but anyways. So short-term rentals seem to be a great investment strategy. What's the average ROI for short-term rental properties from the participants in the group? And what % of investments end up with a loss? Great question. So if you look at Harsh, in the first year, he had 100% ROI if you factor in the tax savings, right? So he put 10% down. When he was able to shelter enough clinical income where he got whatever he put down, he got that same amount as a tax refund. So that's infinite return. So that's a 100% ROI in year one, and that's because of the advanced tax strategy. Now, if you're talking about just cash flow, that varies. Harsh mentioned his first property because he had some capital expenditures in year one. His ROI from cash flow, which we call cash on cash return, dropped down to about 5 to 10%. We have students who are getting, and our coaches, some of our coaches who are running this and have their systems built out. So they're getting anywhere from, I would say, on the lower side, 5%. And this is what you want to see even when you're stress testing the deals before going in. After you stress tested, you want it to be at least 5%, going all the way up to 30, 40%, depending on how they're running the property, the market, and how they acquired the property, right? And are there people who end up with a loss? So that's a tricky question, right? And so the question is, if you're looking at a short period of time, if someone has a major expense, right, then on paper, it looks like you're at a loss. The question is, it depends then on your ability. There are two things that really matter, right? Are you tapping into those advanced tax strategies, getting the tax savings? Is that your buffer that you can then use towards those large capital expenditures, which may be the case, then you're not at a loss, right? Or the other question is, do you have the ability to hold on to the asset, which if you're getting a short-term rental with a 30-year fixed loan, as long as you're making the mortgage payments, you can hold on to the asset. And the question is, what time frame are you looking at, right? Over the course of 5 years, if you look at it, because your ADRs, your average daily rates are going to go up, and that's inflation adjusted, right? Because your asset value is going to go up over the course of time. You will have enough if you're buying the right property, which is why a big focus is on doing market due diligence, and it's on running numbers on those properties and stress testing them. If you're buying the right property, you have to make cash flow, and you have to make a return on the property because your equity is building up. You have debt pay down happening, right? A portion of your your monthly revenue is going towards paying down your equity. You have the tax savings, you have all of that happening. And so the question then becomes, if you have short-term losses because you have large capital expenditure, do you have a buffer to hold on to the asset and the time frame that you're looking at? So that's a very nuanced question. Are there some, I guess the second part of that, maybe the way to look at it is, are there people who don't enjoy short-term rentals? There are some students who don't enjoy short-term rentals who will do it for a little bit, and you have exit options. You can then convert them into midterm rentals, long-term rentals, and some of our students may even consider 1031ing them into syndications if they want to go more passive. So the question then becomes, do you have exit options, and how are you? Do you have the ability to hold on to the asset, and how are you thinking about those short-term setbacks is how I look at it. I hope that answers the question. Hi, Hanal. Okay, I think you should have the link, I'm hoping, for the pop-up Facebook group. Okay. If not, the dashboard link is the other link that you would use to catch the replays, and that is generationalwealthmd.com/dashboard. Okay. Prakriti. Hi, Prakriti. Your question is, do you mention about midterm rentals as well as long-term rental mentors? You're doing short-term rentals, but planning to add midterm rentals and long-term as well. Prakriti, Adrian, can you check and see if Prakriti got the bonus last year? And if she did, then you should be receiving emails. If you joined the first 2 days, Prakriti, then you will have access to this cohort and you'll get an email. If not, you have access to all the recorded modules and all the replays for our midterm rental and multifamily sessions. They're separate modules, so you should be able to go into that and listen to the midterm rental sessions that we've the pre-recorded ones. They should be in there. Okay. Absolutely, Tasmia. Oh, absolutely, Spencer. I'm so excited. Oh, you're seeing patients. Yes, you are on Hawaii time. Absolutely. Aloha to you too. And can't wait to get to know you better within the program. Hi, Farshid. Oh, are you guys still on here? I'm hoping Farshid and Allison, by the way, congratulations, guys. I'm hoping this walkthrough was helpful for you in terms of what's within the program, what resources you have, and how you can get started. Guys, for all of you already in the program, Robin, Arvind, Farshid, Spencer, Allison, make sure you're listening to module 1 and 2 before, if you can, as soon as possible. So then you can actually start connecting with agents and start getting to the point where you're doing market due diligence even before we get started. Okay, awesome. The module site is Kajabi. I'm sorry, that's the portal where the modules are housed, Hanal. So the replays, yes, you have access to the replay links, guys. The coaching program links in there also. Jay, your question is, do I have to create a separate LLC for each property, or can multiple properties be clubbed under the same LLC? Great question. So you want to be intentional about LLCs, right? And so those are, some of them are personal questions, right? But the most important thing is going to be, ideally, if you're setting this up correctly, your LLC is going to be specific to the state in which your properties are. So if you have multiple properties in the same state, yes, you can put them under the same LLC, right? And that LLC is going to be registered in the state that the properties are, not the state that you are. Now, the second question is, how many can I put in one properties can I put into one LLC? And that's going to depend on your comfort level. There are people who have multiple properties within the same LLC. They will look at it as this is how much equity I have in each property, and until I hit $1 million in equity, right? Not the property's worth, the equity, their actual down payment, and how much equity they have in the property, which is the property value minus loan is the equity, right? So they'll wait till they have $1 million in equity. They're comfortable, right? When we buy large apartment complexes under a single LLC, that's tons of net worth in the same LLC. So it depends on your comfort level. And then there are people who run short-term rentals or something in which they're more active, where or they're doing rehabs, they want to keep it separate. So that becomes a personal choice. But I think the most sensitive thing over there to be intentional about is the states that the properties are in, and making sure that your LLC is registered to the state that the property is in, and that therefore it's more cost effective and you're more compliant, and you're able to tap into the protections afforded by the LLC. Okay, absolutely. Prakriti, oh, I feel like some of these questions are repeat questions, but I got to them, I hope. And we are at close to 6:30, so I'm going to let all of you go. Thank you so much for hopping on, guys. If you have any more questions, just keep dropping them into the chat in the Facebook community. Otherwise, send us an email, generationalwealthmd@gmail.com. And if we didn't get to your question, or you have additional questions that you think about, definitely just shoot us an email. And I kept my calendar open to hop on calls with all of you today and tomorrow and Thursday, because the doors close on Thursday. So yeah, if you have any questions, just shoot us an email and I'll try to hop on a call with all of you. Okay, take care, everyone. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Indra. Thanks, Adrian. Sagar, nice to see you on here. Sunil. Okay. Hi, Viji. How are you? Bye, guys.